shocking video shows goat mistreatment. Outrage as Bournemouth Goats accused of cruelty after disturbing video surfaces. A popular family attraction in the UK has come under intense scrutiny after a shocking video allegedly showing cruelty toward goats sparked public outrage and calls for action. Now let's dive deeper and explore every layer of this story on our AI podcast.
How did a herd of 50 weed-eating goats manage to trigger this massive regional controversy?
Yeah, it's quite a story.
I mean, they launched a formal government investigation and completely tore a coastal town apart.
Which is wild when you think about how it started.
Right. Today, we are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources for you. We have local news reports, public statements from business owners, campaign releases from animal welfare advocates, and the fallout from a piece of raw viral footage.
Footage that really shattered a very picturesque illusion for a lot of people.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how a simple, incredibly green landscaping project in Bournemouth turned into a flashpoint for outrage.
And we really want to understand what this startling incident reveals about the collision of nature, social media fame, and our human appetite for public entertainment.
Okay, let's unpack this.
To understand the sheer scale of the public outrage we're going to dissect, you really first have to understand the baseline.
Right, where things started.
Yeah, you need to know just how universally beloved these animals were before everything completely derailed. The timeline here is critical.
Because this did not start out as an entertainment venture at all.
No, not even close.
We are talking about the Bournemouth Goats. This is a herd of around 50 goats living along the very scenic cliffs of Southbourne.
And they were essentially hired workers.
Yeah. The brilliant part of this story is that they were not put there to be a tourist attraction. They had a highly practical, purely functional purpose, which was eco-friendly vegetation control.
The local authorities basically brought them in to eat weeds.
Right, which meant the town didn't have to use chemical herbicides, and they didn't have to, dangle heavy gas-powered machinery over the edges of these really steep cliff faces.
It is a fantastic, highly sustainable model. Goats are essentially biological brush-clearing machines.
I love that description.
It's true. Their digestive systems process and destroy weed seeds, so invasive plants just don't grow back.
Oh, that's really clever.
Yeah, and their hooves naturally aerate the soil as they walk.
Mm-hmm.
So the ecosystem stays balanced, the cliffs stay maintained, and the animals get an endless buffet.
It's just a perfectly utilitarian arrangement.
Until it wasn't.
Right, because then the inevitable happens. 50 goats hanging out on scenic coastal cliffs is incredibly photogenic.
Very Instagrammable.
Exactly. So suddenly, people are taking pictures, the photos end up online, and this purely functional herd morphs into a massive tourist attraction.
With a huge social media following.
People are driving into town from all over just to look at them. I kept thinking about this while reading the source material. It honestly reminds me of, local blue-collar workers who are just out there doing their day jobs.
Yeah, just clocking in.
Right. They put on their hard hats, they're doing the municipal landscaping, and suddenly someone films them, they go completely viral, and now they are forced to be full-time influencers.
They didn't ask for the clout.
No. They literally just wanted to eat the grass.
What's fascinating here is the irony of an eco-friendly initiative becoming a commercialized attraction. We're looking at a psychological phenomenon, often referred to as loving nature to death.
Oh, wow. Loving nature to death.
Yeah, because you have this severe tension between an animal's natural biological utility and the deeply unnatural pressures of becoming a local celebrity.
Right, because they're prey animals, right?
Exactly. We have to consider their psychology. Goats have horizontal, rectangular pupils designed to constantly scan the horizon for predators.
Okay.
So when humans who have forward-facing eyes, like all predators, surround them, stare at them, try to touch them, a goat's biology perceives that as a threat.
But we don't see it that way at all.
No. Humans project this hyper-curated, Disney-fied personality onto them. We assume they love the attention.
We treat them less like working livestock and more like local mascots who, owe the community a performance.
Precisely. And that expectation sets up a very fragile dynamic.
Because the problem with treating livestock like Disney characters is that livestock do not read scripts.
They really don't.
And the higher the pedestal the public puts these animals on, the much harder the fall is going to be when the illusion breaks. Which brings us to December.
The jarring reality check.
Yeah. There was a community event in town, and a concerned citizen in the crowd pulled out their phone and started recording the handlers moving the goats.
And the footage that surfaced online is incredibly tough to watch.
It really is. We need to break down exactly what was on this video because it is the entire catalyst for this crisis.
The visual details are what triggered the massive public backlash, so we do need to be very clear about the mechanics of what the public actually saw that day.
Right. So the video shows a man trying to physically move the animals. He is seen dragging 2 goats along a pavement.
And they are not cooperating.
At all. One of the goats is visibly struggling and bleeding loudly in distress. Then the handler is seen pinning one of the goats to the ground using his knees.
Which is very forceful.
Yeah, and then he lifts the animal by its collar, and in the footage, the goat appears to be choking and making these highly strange noises.
It's a very chaotic scene.
He clearly can't manage both animals at once, so he hands one goat off to a colleague and then proceeds to carry the remaining goat into an enclosure entirely by its horns.
Which, I have to point out, moving an adult goat by its horns is a remarkably aggressive way to handle livestock.
Is it?
Oh, absolutely. Particularly in a dense public setting. It completely strips the animal of its agency and its balance.
When I was reading through the descriptions of this footage, I was genuinely taken aback. You, as the casual observer, you have this Instagram perfect idea of these goats happily munching on cliffside flowers.
Right, the pastoral ideal.
Contrast that with the harsh physical reality of a man pinning them with his knees and dragging them by the horns. It creates an immediate visceral shock.
It induces a profound visual dissonance for the viewer. The public is entirely used to consuming curated, peaceful images of these animals.
Because that aesthetic is the entire brand of the Bournemouth Goats.
Exactly. So when raw, unfiltered footage of an animal choking and fighting to get away just drops into people's feeds, it is deeply emotionally activating.
I can imagine.
To fully understand why this escalated so quickly, we have to look at the legal framework. In the UK, the Animal Welfare Act of 2006 governs this exact scenario.
That act was actually mentioned multiple times in the campaign releases we read. How does it actually apply to a guy dragging a goat at a festival?
Well, the Animal Welfare Act of 2006 was a major paradigm shift. Prior to that, laws mostly just prosecuted active malicious cruelty.
Like physically beating an animal.
Right. But the 2006 Act introduced a legally binding duty of care. It means anyone responsible for an animal must ensure its welfare needs are met.
Okay, and what does that mean legally?
One of those specific legal needs is the ability to exhibit normal behavior patterns. It protects them from unnecessary suffering, which legally includes mental distress and fear.
Oh, wow.
So when the public sees a goat being dragged by his horns and choking on a collar, they aren't just seeing bad optics.
They are witnessing a situation where an animal's natural behaviors are being entirely suppressed.
Yes, inducing a state of absolute panic.
So when a community sees their beloved local mascots in a state of sheer panic, who do they call?
They bypass the event organizers entirely and go straight to the advocates.
Right to the top.
Yeah, the member of the public who captured that December footage shared it directly with 2 major animal welfare groups, Animal Aid and Dorset Animal Action.
And those groups mobilized immediately. After reviewing the footage, they reported the incident straight to the Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole Council.
They did not mess around.
No, they demanded a formal, rigorous investigation, specifically citing potential violations of that Animal Welfare Act of 2006 you just mentioned.
And they went further than just an investigation.
We did. They also launched a public petition calling for an absolute ban on live animal displays at public events, and they demanded that this specific operator's event permit be completely revoked.
The language from the campaigners was really unequivocal. Nietzsche Harris, who is the co-founder of Dorset Animal Action, went on the record stating that the footage was deeply distressing.
What specifically did she point out?
She pointed out that the goats showed, and this is a direct quote, clear signs of fear and stress, and that they were being forced to move against their will.
Animal Aid matched that exact energy. Alex Harmon, their campaign manager, directed his criticism straight at the local government.
Right, because the council was moving a bit slow.
Yeah, Harmon publicly stated that despite the council giving vague assurances about an investigation, there had been absolutely no visible enforcement action taken by the authorities at that point.
And that perceived inaction from the council acted like a bellows on a fire. The community response just became explosive.
People were looking at this raw footage, and comparing the treatment of these beloved local animals to the practices you would see in a slaughterhouse.
The comments were really intense.
Reading through the documented online comments is rough. People are using words like vile, horrific, and completely unnecessary. They were absolutely devastated.
Understandably so.
But hold on, let me push back on this narrative for a second.
Please do.
If you, the listener, picture this scene. It's a busy community event, broad daylight, crowds of people who supposedly love these animals are standing right there.
Right.
Why did it take a viral video posted days later for someone to notice the animals were being mishandled?
That's a great point.
If this herd is constantly at public events, were the warning signs of their stress just being ignored in real time because people just wanted a fun selfie?
That is the most uncomfortable question at the center of this entire controversy. It reveals the psychological mechanics of crowds.
How so?
We are talking about the entertainment frame mixed with the bystander effect. When humans enter a festive environment, there are food stalls, music, maybe a bouncy castle.
Yeah.
Our brains frame the context as entertainment.
So we drop our guard.
Exactly. If an animal is present, we subconsciously assume that an authority figure has deemed it safe and appropriate. Even if the animal is panting or pacing, the crowd's collective cognitive dissonance overrides their intuition.
They think, well, the handler's right there in a uniform, so this must be normal.
Exactly. It often takes an undeniable, highly aggressive action like pinning a goat with a knee caught on tape, isolated from the festive atmosphere, to actually break through that collective blindness.
Which forces the person in charge to answer for what happened when the blinders finally come off.
Because there's nowhere to hide anymore.
Right. The herd owner, Mark Jackson, was facing a tidal wave of public fury. He took to social media to address the situation.
And he had to make some tough calls.
He confirmed that due to the massive backlash, the Bournemouth Goats would be officially withdrawing from a major planned Easter event.
But his defense of the December video is where the plot thickens.
Yeah, he didn't just apologize for poor handling. He blamed the logistics of the event itself.
He essentially argued that the environment forced his hand.
He laid out several severe logistical challenges from that day. He cited restricted vehicle access, meaning his team couldn't get their transport trailers close enough to the enclosure.
Okay.
And crucially, he specifically cited interference from the public. He argued that these external factors made it incredibly difficult to transport the animals safely through the area.
Even though the video looked bad.
Right. He maintained that despite how the viral video looked, the goats' welfare remains his absolute top priority.
Handlers frequently cite logistical challenges when defending against welfare accusations. Moving a herd of livestock requires manipulating their flight zone.
What's a flight zone?
It's the imaginary circle around an animal that, when entered, causes them to move away. To guide a goat calmly, you apply gentle pressure to the edge of that flight zone.
I understand logistical nightmares. It sounds like trying to parallel park a moving truck in the middle of a crowded farmer's market. But if you know you can't transport them safely through the crowds, why agree to bring them to a public event in the first place?
That is a very valid critique.
Right. If you are the livestock expert and you know the vehicle access is restricted and the crowd is going to be swarming the flight zone, isn't it your fundamental job to look at the event map and say, no, this isn't safe for my herd?
It absolutely exposes a classic catch-22 in the animal entertainment industry.
How so?
The owner complains about public interference making the transport hazardous. However, the public's intense desire to be physically close to the animals, the very popularity that makes bringing the herd to the event lucrative or appealing, is exactly what creates that hazardous, high-stress logistical environment.
So the demand creates the danger.
Exactly. You cannot have a highly publicized animal attraction without drawing a dense crowd. And dense human crowds inherently destroy the quiet, controlled space required to safely move prey animals.
So with the public outraged over the video and the owner fiercely defending his difficult logistics, the Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole Council finally had to issue a ruling on their Animal Welfare Act investigation.
They were in a really tough spot.
How do they actually navigate this minefield?
The council officially concluded their investigation and managed to thread the needle between the two opposing sides.
Okay, so a compromise.
First, they flatly rejected the activists' claims that the council was ignoring the issue or taking no action. But they also didn't give the owner a completely free pass or revoke his permit entirely.
They opted for heavy regulation over a total ban for the operator.
Correct. The council issued a strict new set of requirements for the license holder moving forward. To continue operating any sort of business with the animals, there must be vastly improved risk assessments.
What does a risk assessment look like for a goat?
In the context of livestock, a risk assessment means mapping out dedicated, crowd-free escape routes for the animals. It means installing proper physical barriers to prevent the public from breaching those flight zones we discussed.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And ensuring much stricter, proper staffing levels. The handler can't be left trying to manage 2 panicked goats alone. Finally, they demanded enhanced documentation for all future events.
But the council spokesperson made one final definitive statement about the future of the famous goats themselves.
The ones from the cliffs.
Yes.
All right.
They noted that while the herd's general day-to-day welfare out on the cliffs hadn't previously raised red flags, these specific goats will not be attending future public events. Period.
Wow.
They are officially retired from the public appearance circuit. And the fallout might actually continue because Council Leader Millie Earle has indicated she is reviewing the case even further due to sustained public pressure.
The community pressure has not dissipated because the underlying ethical questions remain unanswered.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the profound irony of this final outcome.
Yeah.
In order to save these goats from the stress of their own popularity, they had to be completely banned from the very community that made them famous.
It's so true.
The town loved them so deeply and wanted to see them so badly that they accidentally created an environment that was physically and mentally toxic for the animals.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this story transcends a single man mishandling a goat in December.
It's way bigger than that now.
It has. This incident has acted as a catalyst, reigniting a massive regional debate over the fundamental ethics of using animals in any form of public entertainment.
Because the campaigners aren't letting this go.
Not at all. Campaigners are seizing on this moment to argue that this was not just a one-off mistake by a stressed handler. Their argument is that even the most well-intentioned attractions, run by people who genuinely care about their animals, will inevitably expose those animals to completely unnecessary stress the moment they are placed in a crowded, noisy, human-centric environment.
So it's systemic.
Exactly. The future of live animal displays across the entire region is now highly uncertain, as event organizers look at this controversy and ask themselves if the risk is worth it.
It has been a wild journey tracing this timeline today.
Definitely.
We started with a brilliant, highly practical, eco-friendly initiative, goats eating weeds on the Southbourne cliffs as a green alternative to machinery.
And we unpacked how that purely functional purpose got hijacked by social media fame, transforming working livestock into unwilling celebrities.
We analyzed that jarring December footage that completely shattered the community's pastoral illusion, diving into the mechanics of the Animal Welfare Act.
We looked at the fierce backlash from welfare groups, the bystander effect of the crowd, the owner's defense of his logistical nightmare.
And finally, the council's decision to ban the goats from all future events. So what does this all mean? When you look at all these moving parts together, what is the ultimate lesson from the Bournemouth controversy?
I think the most vital takeaway is the absolute necessity of critical thinking whenever we consume feel-good animal content.
That's a great point.
It is so easy to scroll through your feed, double-tap a photo of a cute goat at a festival, and just move on with your day. But truly understanding a situation requires looking far beyond the edges of the photograph.
You have to look at the whole context.
Exactly. It requires actively examining the multiple perspectives we discussed today. You have to consider the fierce protection demanded by the animal welfare activists, the genuine, overwhelming logistical hazards faced by the herd owner on the ground, and the slow, methodical liability mitigation of the local council.
Right.
All of these viewpoints enrich our understanding of a complex reality. They remind us that nature is fundamentally wild, and it rarely fits neatly into our modern desire for uncomplicated, accessible entertainment.
It really doesn't. And that leads me to a final lingering thought I want to leave you with today. We all love to support local green initiatives. We champion eco-friendly solutions like using goats instead of chemicals.
Of course.
But if our human desire to constantly interact with, photograph, and post about nature ultimately causes these animals deep physical stress, are we loving these local eco-initiatives to a point where we're actually doing more harm than good? What does true ethical coexistence actually look like when social media fame gets involved? Something to ponder the next time a viral animal video pops up on your feed. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Okay, one question for you. Should authorities like Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole Council impose stricter penalties when viral videos show possible animal cruelty? And should attractions like Bournemouth Goats be banned from public events altogether? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.